The following podcast may not be suitable for all ages. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to our Scary Story Podcast. I am Mr. Baker the Undertaker, here with Haunted Haley J, Kilari the Curse, and Ayani the Apparition. We're going to tell you 4 spine-tingling stories, starting with Ayani the Red Spot.
While Ruth slept, a spider crawled across her face. It stopped for several minutes on her left cheek, then went on its way. "What is that red spot on my cheek?" she asked her mother the next morning. "It looks like a spider bite," her mother said. "It'll go away, just don't scratch it." Soon the red spot grew into a small red boil. "Look at it now," Ruth said. "It's getting bigger. It's sore." "That sometimes happens," her mother said. "It's coming to a head." In a few days the boil was even larger. "Look at it now," Ruth said. "It hurts and it's ugly." "We'll have the doctor look at it," her mother said. "Maybe it's infected." But the doctor could not see Ruth until the next day. That night, Ruth took a hot bath. She soaked herself. The boil burst. Out poured a swarm of tiny spiders from the eggs their mother had laid in her cheek.
Up next, Kilari the Cursed has a story for you.
As their mother was sleeping, she told her children not to open the door under any circumstances. "If anyone knocks, don't answer it," she told them. But the boy and his sister didn't pay attention to the mother's warning. "She's just being too careful," the boy said. They both figured they could take care of themselves in any situation. About an hour after the parents slept, the kids heard a knock, knock, knock on the front door. "Just ignore it," said the girl to her brother, but again they heard knock, knock, knock. It happened again, and it grew louder each time. Eventually the girl couldn't stand anymore. "I'm gonna answer it," she told him. When the boy reminded her of their mother's warning, the girl just wouldn't listen. Again they heard a knock, knock, knock on the door. Finally the sister went downstairs to the front door. Her brother lay on the sofa watching TV. He heard her asking loudly, "Who is it?" He also heard the click on the lock on the front door. At that point he only heard silence. He lay there for a while, listening for any noise, but heard nothing. Eventually he started getting scared. His sister still hadn't returned. He was afraid to call out his sister, so he sneaked out the back door and made his way to their neighbor's house. When he went into the house, his neighbor was watching the local news on the TV. The news anchor on TV was talking about a recent murder. Then they showed a reporter live at the scene of the murder. "The victim has yet to be identified and the murder is on the loose," he heard the reporter announce. The neighbor said to the boy, "Hey, that looks like your house." The boy was shaking in fear. "That is my house," he said, "and that's my front door."
Creepy story from Kilari the Cursed. Our third story comes from Haunted Haley, the Monkey's Paw.
It was a cold, rainy night. Mr. White and his son Herbert were playing chess in their small house. Mrs. White sat nearby, knitting. Soon there was a knock at the door. Mr. White opened it and saw his old friend, Sergeant Major Morris, who had just come back from India. He came in and sat with them by the fire. While they drank tea, Morris told stories about India. Then he showed them something strange, a dried monkey's paw. The paw is magic, Morris said. It gives 3 wishes to anyone who owns it, but be careful, the wishes come with a price. Mr. and Mrs. White were very curious. Morris said that he had used his 3 wishes, but he would not tell them what happened. He looked sad and serious. Morris threw the paw into the fire, but Mr. White quickly pulled it out. He wanted to try it. After Morris left, Mr. White joked, Let's wish for 200 pounds to pay off the house. He held the paw and said, I wish for 200 pounds. Suddenly, the paw moved in his hand. He was shocked. That night, nothing else happened, and they all went to bed. The next day, Herbert, their son, went to work at his factory. Later in the day, a man from Herbert's factory came to their house. He looked nervous and sad. There was an accident at the factory, he said. Your son, Herbert, was killed. Mrs. White screamed. Mr. White was in shock. The man said the company was sorry, and due to his death, they gave them 200 pounds, the exact amount that Mr. White had wished for. Mr. and Mrs. White were heartbroken. A week later, Mrs. White had an idea. Use the paw again, she said. Wish for Herbert to come back. Mr. White was scared. He died in a terrible way, he said. What if he comes back? Wrong. But Mrs. White begged him. So Mr. White held the paw and said, I wish my son alive again. At first nothing happened. Then knock, knock, knock. Someone was knocking at the door. Mrs. White jumped up. It's Herbert, she cried. Let me open the door. But Mr. White was afraid. He thought that Herbert's broken body. What if it wasn't really him? While Mrs. White tried to unlock the door, Mr. White looked for the paw. Just before she opened the door, she found it and made the last wish. I wish him dead and at peace. The knocking stopped. Mrs. White opened the door. No one was there.
Ooh. Be careful what you wish for. Our final story is called Taily Po. There was an old man who lived alone in the middle of the forest. He must have been 60 years old if he was a day, but nobody knew his real name. Most folks just called him Old Jake. He had 3 loyal hunting dogs that kept him company on the long, lonely nights. Their names were I Know, You Know, and Calico. He lived in an old cabin he had built himself, way back in the deep, dark woods. It wasn't very big, but it was just enough for him and his dogs. The cabin only had one room in it that was his bedroom, his living room, his dining room, and his kitchen too. At one end of the room was a nice, big open fireplace where he could cook his supper and warm his bones on the cold winter nights. One of those cold winter nights, the old man's stomach was grumbling, but there was nothing to eat in the cupboards but a few moldy potatoes. He stoked the fire in the fireplace to keep the cabin warm and went to bed. He was just about to fall asleep when he heard something in the room. He opened his eyes just in time to see a shadow creeping across the wall. When he sat up in bed and peered into the darkness, his eyes grew wide in terror. Sitting across the room from him was the weirdest looking creature he had ever seen. It was short and stubby with pointed ears and bright yellow eyes that seemed to burn with some strange fire. Its body was covered in black fur, and it had big, sharp claws and a long, thick tail. For a moment, Jake just sat there, frozen in fear. He stared at the hideous creature, and it stared back at him. Then, quick as a flash, he grabbed his hunting knife and lunged at the thing. It sprang up and scurried out the hole it had crawled in the cabin wall. The thing was fast, but so was Jake. A split second before it escaped, he brought his knife down squarely on its big tail and cut it off. The creature let out a horrible screech and disappeared into the night. Old Jake was left standing there with a long, thick tail in one hand and his knife in the other. Jake was about to throw the tail outside when his stomach started rumbling again. He was famished with hunger, so he took the tail, cleaned it, cooked it, and ate it for his supper. With his stomach full, old Jake plugged up the hole in the cabin wall with some old rags and newspapers. Then he got back into bed and drifted off to sleep. He hadn't been asleep very long when he was awakened by a strange noise. It sounded like something trying to scratch its way into the cabin. The old man thought that if he stayed really quiet, the thing might go away. He could hear it. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Then a strange voice outside hissed, "Taily Po, Taily Po, I want my Taily Po." He thought he must be imagining things, but then he heard it again. "Taily Po, Taily Po, I want my Taily Po." Old Jake jumped out of bed and ran to the front door and threw it open. He called out to his dogs, "I know, you know, Calico, get over here." The dogs, they came tearing up to the cabin and ran around barking and sniffing and snarling. Couldn't find a thing. Jake shrugged his shoulders and went back to bed. He was just about to drip off to sleep when he heard the noise again. This time, the scratching sounded like it was at the window. Whatever it was, it really wanted to get in. But the scratching seemed to be on two walls at one time. Then he heard the strange voice again. This time it hissed a little louder. "Taily Po! Taily Po! Where is my Taily Po?" Old Jake, who wasn't one to frighten easily, was getting a little shaky. This was getting really weird, so he eased to the window and called, "I know, you know, Calico, come on over here and see what this scratching at my house." The three dogs bounded up to the porch. They sniffed around and barked, and sniffed, but they never found anything at all. Jake decided to stay up for the rest of the night to protect himself, his dogs, and his little cabin. So he pulled a chair next to the fire, grabbed a blanket from his bed, and settled in for the rest of the wind-chilled wintry night. Sleep soon overtook him, and once again he dozed off. It was almost dawn when Jake woke with a start. The sound of scratching seemed to reverberate from every area in the cabin. Jake searched frantically for his axe, his rifle, or something to defend himself with, but he was so frightened he couldn't find anything. The scratching grew louder and louder and louder. "Taily Po! Taily Po! Give me back my Taily Po!" Jake yelled back, "Leave me alone! I ain't got your Taily Po!" Then he called his dogs, but this time the dogs didn't come. He waited and waited, but still not one dog came running. Jake had never been so scared in his life. He ran to his bed and jumped in. The scratching and the voice grew louder and louder. "Taily Po! Taily Po! Give me back my Taily Po!" Jake yelled back as loud as he could, "I ain't got no Taily Po! So why don't you leave me alone and go about your business? I ain't never hurt nobody or nothing. Just leave me be." The scratching seemed to be inside the house now. The voice was so loud it was deafening. "Taily Po! Taily Po! You took my Taily Po! Now I'm going to get it back. Give it to me now." Jake pulled the cover up over his head and stayed as quiet as he could. But the scratching was now in his room. "Taily Po! Taily Po! Give me back my Taily Po!" Jake then felt the thing scratching up the bottom of the bed and onto the cover. Jake eased the cover down to see what was steadily approaching. Then he saw it. A short, stubby creature with pointed ears, fat feet with long claws, and bloodshot red eyes that glowed in the dark. Eyes that seemed to burn straight through Jake. Before he could pull the cover over his head again, the thing pounced on his chest, looking straight down at him, and said, "You've got my Taily Po, and you better give it back to me now." Jake yelled, "I ate it! I ate your Taily Po! It's gone!" And that thing started to scratch and claw and tear away at old poor Jake trying to get that Taily Po back. Jake tried to fight back, but the thing was too strong, and those claws were too sharp. Jake's screams echoed through the dark mountains. Then stopped, leaving a chilling silence. After a month or two without hearing from old Jake, the townspeople got worried and came looking for him. They hiked up the mountain and through the forest, but when they reached his cabin, they found that it had been torn to shreds. There was no sign of Jake or the dogs. They searched the woods and called out to him, but there was no answer. Old Jake and his dogs were never seen again. The townspeople say that if you are all alone out there at night and you listen carefully and the wind is just right, you can hear a strange voice calling on the wind. Taily Po, Taily Po, now I've got my Taily Po. That is the end of our Scary Story podcast. Thank you for listening. I've been Mr. Baker the Undertaker, joined by Haunted Haley, Kilari the Cursed, and Ayani the Apparition. Until next time, wake up, Lobos.